Good morning, Connie. I am up today. It's wonderful. Heading on my way out, but I want to finish what I was talking to you about last night. I've sent you two videos. The first video was about my high school and me being in the choir and how I got musicianship of the year in 1976. And then I shared to you how I stayed home with my parents and I practiced the piano for 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then, of course, I shared with you how I wanted to be a concert pianist. And then in that video, I also shared about my first job that I had at the Hamburger House on Magnolia Avenue in El Cajon City, right where the old Vons used to be in the old Sir George's. So the second video is continuing what I telling you about my first job I had with Pamela J. Clark, when my manager at the Hamburger House as a dishwasher, and I was making $2.65 an hour in 1977. See, I worked at the Hamburger House from February 6th, 1977 to June 16th, 1977. In the second video, of course, I'm telling you about the new manager, Carol Stephahagen, who I told you who was a blonde, good-looking, sexy, kind of reminded me of Dolly Parton. I told you about how Carol took over as a new manager, and she fired everybody, and including me. She cut my hours, and then, of course, I told you about how devastated I was when she let me go, of course. And then I talk about working at the International House of Pancakes. And then I'm telling you about I worked there, and then he let me go at the International House of Pancakes in 1977 of October, and then I worked at Amy's family restaurant as a busboy for a month, and then they didn't have enough work for me, so that's where I left off. Now I am going to leave off where I was talking about. So bear in mind, after all, my first job I really loved from February 1977 to June 1977, and then the new management let me go, which I was totally devastated. I really even wanted to go back to work there, and being 18 years old in 1977, I was very gullible, but it gave me good experience when you think about it, because I learned what it was like to work in a non-union workplace, and bear in mind, my dad was very active in the union. He was a union leader. And remember, I had said that when I grew up with my dad went everything from a union organizer to a union shop steward to a union secretary, and then my dad became a union vice president in 1970, 71, 72. So my dad was making good money because he retired in the Navy. My dad retired in the Navy in 1963. He went 20 years, and then when he retired in the Navy in 1963, he worked as a bartender, he worked as an insurance man, he worked as an ice cream man, and finally he got the janitorial job at Miramar Naval Air Base Station, because on Saturdays my mom and dad and my sister and I would go to the commissary. My dad, had privileges still because he got his check. So my mom usually spent at least $300, $400 on groceries. We had two refrigerators, a refrigerator in the kitchen, and we had another refrigerator freezer in the garage, and we had another freezer. Then we had three pantries full of canned goods, and then there was another pantry that my mom kept in the garage because she canned. We had 52 fruit trees. When my folks bought the place in 1959 in Santee, after coming from Japan, they adopted me when I was 7 months old in Japan. Well, then my mom and dad decided to buy a house out in Santee in 1959. So my mom and dad and my younger sister Anna Marie, who was born in Maryland, my younger sister Anna Marie was born in Maryland in 1953, October 3rd. My younger sister Anna Marie was a Libra, so she was born in Maryland. My mother actually had 3 daughters. My mother was married 3 times. My mom's maiden name was Helen Biba Thatch Conroy. And Helen Biba Thatch was my mom's maiden name. My mom was born January 17th, 1919, and she was born in San Diego. Her mother, which was my grandmother, who taught me how to play the piano and who taught me how to read music, my grandmother was born in South Dakota. My grandmother had my mother when she was 17 years old in 1919, okay? So my mom was born 1919, January 17th, and my grandmother being German and Dutch, she was married, but she divorced her husband because her husband was an alcoholic. My grandmother's name was Viva Thatch, and she divorced her husband, but they still kept in touch. And anyway,